Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Outer West Community Committee. My name is Councillor Amanda Carter and I'll be chairing the meeting today. It'll be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Can I ask everybody to introduce themselves? I'll start with Andrew.
Councillor Andrew Carter, Cardiff Parsley Ward.
Councillor Trish Smith, Putty Ward.
Councillor Peter Carlill, Cardiff Parsley Ward.
Councillor Adrian McCluskey, Farnley and Wortley Ward.
Councillor Mark Stewards, Farnley and Wortley Ward.
Councillor Simon Searer, Putty Ward.
Councillor Dawn Searer, Putty Ward. Rachel Marshall from the Communities team. Natasha Trossard, Governance Officer.
And Natalie Smith, Localities Officer.
Thank you. The reason that we are live streaming it from Farnley Hall today rather than Pudley Civic Hall, which is an item on the agenda today, is because they don't have the technology at Pudley Civic Hall. We have asked for the technology to be moved around the different wards. However, the IT department are unable to supply it at this time. But we would very much have liked to have had our meeting today at Pudley Civic Hall if we could have. So with that, I will hand over to the clerk.
Thanks, Chair. So agenda item 1 is no appeals. Agenda item 2 is no exempt items. Agenda item 3, no formal late items. However, members did receive supplementary information with this application on there. Agenda item 4 and declarations from members.
I'd like to declare an interest, please, Chair. So I'm chairman of the Putty Scarecrow Festival, which is mentioned in the report, and I'm also a trustee of the Putty Wellbeing Charity, where the Putty Youth Cafe is cited. I have no fiscal financial interest in either.
And I declare an interest as chair of Cardiff and Bloom. No financial interest. I also chair the Parsley Business Forum, which pays the difference between what the council pay and the amount left outstanding on Parsley Christmas lights.
Can I declare an interest as the interim chair of Parsley and Bloom? If anyone does want to take up the role, then there is one available, and people can get in touch direct with myself. I have no financial interest in that.
Anybody else?
Again, I'm chair of Putty Carnival, and I manage Putty Christmas lights with no financial contribution.
Anybody else?
Member of Carnival and Putty Christmas Lights Group again.
Thank you. I am a member of Cardiff and Bloom and Parsley Business Forum, but no financial interest. Right, that's that out. There's quite a lot of declarations today, isn't there? So the next item on the agenda is the closure of Putty Civic Hall. Unfortunately, our speakers from the council are not here yet, so we'll start by taking other items. So we'll go through previous minutes first. Has everybody read them?
Yes.
Any comments on the minutes? Are we happy to accept them? Thank you. We might as well take the next item on the agenda, which is times and dates of venues for our next meetings.
Thanks, Chair. Just bear with me. So the annual report that comes every year to the committee. I'm just seeking members to come in and approve the dates that are listed at paragraph 5 of the submitted report. Yeah, there's nothing really much more to say apart from hand it over to members to comment on the date. Thank you.
Any comments, anybody? Peter?
The dates are fine, Chair. I just wondered, obviously, we meet in Farnley Hall for each one at the moment because it is the one with video conferencing facilities. We would like to go in different areas, as you suggested earlier. I just wondered whether we'd had the update on that. I presume you've chased that again. And
We keep chasing it. The last I heard was from the Chairs Forum that they were going to look into it because you can apparently buy mobile ones that will actually then fit into the council's IT system. It's the council's IT system that appears to be the problem. Because I know that when I sat on the police and crime panel, they had a mobile one that you could take around different venues. So we will keep on that because I think other area committees want to do the same thing. Thank you.
thank you.
If indeed Pudley Civic Hall is still open, can I strongly suggest that we insist that the council make available electronic system so that our constituents can come and attend, as I know many of them would have wished to today. This location is a beautiful location, but it is not very convenient for people travelling by train or car.
Right. Any more comments on that? Yes, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Just the 1 PM start time, is there any chance of moving even one of those meetings to after normal working hours? Not just so that we can attend, but also members of the public who are working can attend as well.
Yes, absolutely. We were going to look at that for next year, definitely.
Okay,
All right.
brilliant, thank you.
Okay, so we will now go back to the agenda. Is the agenda on the closure of the Civic Hall, or proposed closure of the Civic Hall.
Chair, before you do, can I have some clarification?
Yes.
Can someone tell me where Pudsey New Street railway station is situated?
In terms of the language in the report,
Well, the only New Street station I know is in Birmingham. You're not suggesting people come to Birmingham. It says in your report and in press coverage, it's referred to as Pudsey New Street railway station.
I suspect it's a typo in terms of referring to the new car parking where there's been an error in the correction of the report in the detail when we've been just doing finalising.
Well, yes, that's fine, but it also refers to the construction of a new decked car park. Is it underground and does it come up? Because I used the station last few weeks ago and there was no decked car park. I have been twice this week and I can find no decked car park. So it would appear this report is rather full of mistakes.
Which section are you looking at? Sorry, I'm looking at this new Pudsey station where I'm looking. Which page?
It is on page 10. Pudsey New Street Rail Station, which is free to use. And above, and it refers to the new decked car park. I am suggesting to you there is no decked car park. Neither is there a New Street rail station. There is New Pudsey Station with a car park which has been enlarged, but it ain't decked.
So elsewhere in the report it is referred to as Pudsey Station in the correct fashion. So apologies for the error that appears in the report, but I'm not sure it's material to the content of the report because it's in relation to highlighting that there is a new car park which is free, which means that the reasons why we're not necessarily achieving income in the car park attached to Pudsey Civic Hall is that people are choosing to park in that car park. So apologies for the kind of error in the point of detail, but the reason for the inclusion of the reference to it is to illustrate why people are not parking in that car park anymore in terms of the reduction of income.
Thank you, Mr. Woodhouse. Could I ask everybody to speak up because the acoustics are not very good in this room and it's very difficult for people to hear on the YouTube channel. Thank you for that, Mr. Woodhouse. It is very worrying that there are some errors in this report and you just wonder what other errors there are in the report. However, I'll hand over to you.
So thank you. Apologies for just being a few minutes late, just getting here in terms of traffic, noting the point about travelling here earlier May. So just to introduce myself first of all, I'm Eve Roothouse, I'm the Chief Officer of Culture and Economy in the Council. I'm part of the City Development Directorate. The responsibility for the operation of Pudsey Civic Hall sits within my service area as part of arts events and venues. So hence, it's my responsibility as Chief Officer to bring forward this report today. So I'm obviously aware you will have all read it, but it might be helpful just to kind of quickly summarise the position. The Council's budget proposals, which are being considered at full council on 21st of February, include a proposal to close Pudsey Civic Hall. That's been brought forward because the venue is not meeting its income targets, primarily connected to the loss of income that relates to the car park. And the details are set out in the report of how that income has been affected post-COVID-19. The secondary piece is that the site also needs investment, both in the short term and in the long term. So the latest condition report for the building was produced in 2015, and that condition report identified a series of investments needed and put a price against that of a 2015 value, which if brought up to today's cost would be in the region of about £328,000 to bring the kind of those costs forward. So that would include, for example, upgrading the windows to meet EPC standards and addressing heating and other key systems in the building. Our asset management colleagues have also used a standard tool that's used by quantity surveyors to bring forward an estimation of what cost would look like to completely refurbish the building, which will be required towards 2029 with an estimated cost of around 7.25 million. Now, I appreciate that there's a gap in those two numbers, but it's worth just noting that the numbers from the condition report didn't include prelims or any contingency costs, which would have to be added. And the 7.25 figure includes if you were doing that at 2029. So obviously, if you did it sooner, the cost could be slightly less than that in terms of the investment. Equally, if you did commission someone to fully advise about a refurbishment, there might be areas where you would choose to do less or more, but it's a kind of industry tool to give you an indicative figure, and that's where that number has come from in the report. One of the other things just to note as well is that finding an alternative operator to the council for the venue wouldn't necessarily solve the issues, because the government's position in law is that in order to lease the building commercially, we'd have to meet EPC standards, which would require investment in the building, probably to the similar amount noted in the condition report, to get the windows and the heating up to the right level of positioning. So in that scenario, if the council were to be able to afford to make that investment, the preference then would be to continue to operate it within the council. So I hope that kind of just sets out the context. That there is not been a decision taken at this stage. It's going for that debate at full council on the 21st of February. Any decision will be taken through a formal report, and that will include all of the views that we've received through public consultation and additional meetings that we've held, including today, and also with some particular groups, including YAMSEM, as noted in the report.
Thank you, Ms. Woodhouse. I'll open it to questions. Councillor Seary.
Can I just clarify, you mentioned EPC is a requirement. My understanding is that it isn't anymore.
If you're going to commercially lease a building, as of the 1st of April last year, 2023, the building has to meet a particular grading. So there would be an investment needed to meet that standard.
Are you sure about that?
That is the advice I've received from colleagues from asset management.
There was a wider piece on EPC where the government were going to make it a requirement to all properties that were let, which would affect private landlords. And I understand the government have U-turned on that, but it's still a requirement of commercial lets. That's my understanding.
Okay. More some qualifications for that.
I think we'd probably need to have that checked out properly, because I understand that for leasing properties, I understand the ECT has to be at a certain standard. I didn't realise it was for leasing as well, and we can check that out.
I'm very happy to get a written note from a colleague in asset management who's a specialist in that area as by way of follow-up. They couldn't accompany me today because it's half term leave. But happy to confirm that in writing, but that is the advice I've received ahead of the meeting, that we would need to meet that standard.
Like the government policy quoting, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Councillor Frishner.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, and thanks for coming before us today. Looking at the figures, the car parking seems to be almost the single item that is causing the problems here. So how has that been marketed? And should we sell a very much loved and well-used asset just for the sake that the car park isn't making its own, it isn't making its own money? You've got a forecast for this year of minus £339 in the car park, and presumably that's some sort of management fee there. In terms of bringing the building up to the required standard, for leasing or for future use, surely it needs to be a spend to save, like we've done elsewhere in the city. That makes much more sense to me. There are very many groups who use it, but equally, I don't think there's been an effective marketing strategy at all, because there are many times that we see or hear, because our ward, it sits in the Carving Party ward, but people believe it to be in the Pudgy ward. And many of our residents tell me, I would have gone had I known about it. So I don't think there's an effective marketing strategy there. That would increase footfall, that would increase bookings. So I do think that closing it is very short-sighted, and I think we need to look at a spend to save, and get an effective marketing strategy involved.
And so on the car parking, the primary, so just on the car parking, the primary driver was the leasehold that we had with a major employer in the proximity, namely with Lloyds. And obviously with changing working patterns, their staff are not coming into the office as frequently, and they can now accommodate car parking on their own site. And so they terminated that lease. And so there's not the demand in the same way from local employers for a similar arrangement. And you could argue, as it says in the report, that the car parking space is kind of potentially larger than is needed for the site, and hence why it's providing that service, and that arrangement was in place with Lloyds comfortably before. But there's not a kind of an alternative employer in the area that has that need. The £339 figure is about the income from people paying, coming to the site and paying for parking through the machines, the income that's being made this year. The parking charges are not applicable over weekends and evenings when we have the biggest events in Quincy Civic Hall. So there's not necessarily an income that comes through car parking at the weekends, because then that's the time when people can can park for free, in the site. So you don't derive the income, and the events that happen during the week tend to be smaller, so more kind of maybe using the smaller meeting rooms. That's how that plays out. In relation to your point about marketing, yes, if we had a larger marketing budget, we could definitely do more marketing for the site. We do use Tessitura, which is the tool that we use across the council to email out to people around activities there. We do a level of promotion around it. We are working across the council through a service review to look at how people can book spaces online, and creating that pathway for people to be able to book all of our venues, not just Quincy Civic Hall as a case in point. So there is work that we're looking to do to improve that. But how far we can go will be constrained, I guess, on budget. And finally, on the point of a spend to save case, happy to take that away and give that some consideration as we're pulling up running through the full options for the site. I think it's important that all options are considered. So happy to take that feedback away and look at that in terms of the potential affordability of that in the broader context.
I think just further on the spend to save case, if that budget was available, that would absolutely be my preference. Of course it would. No one comes into the business of politics to close things down. Without getting into a larger debate, our capacity to do spend to save things is severely diminished. But it's something where, if that opportunity were to arise, there'd be my preference. I'm happy to take any suggestions from any members or any members of the public. I've met members of the public who use Quincy Civic Hall already to speak about kind of what potential options would be. So we are still looking through those. As Eve said, no final decisions been made.
Just pop up, please, Chair. Sorry. On the marketing budget, you employ people at the Civic Hall. So surely they could find some time in the day to promote things on social media, for example. I know not everybody is on social media by any stretch, but it is quite a valuable tool. Equally, there are countless notice boards around the area that, you know, that don't have adverts in for anything. They could, you know, do that on a monthly basis, which wouldn't be too much of an onerous task, and is, you know, relatively cheap. There's various libraries and community hubs and things that could also highlight events. So there are ways without needing you know, a huge marketing budget.
Yeah, so we do have a team that does social media marketing as part of a team that's part of Matthew's team in the Arts Adventure and Venues team. So they do use social media and paid adverts on Facebook and other channels to promote events. That's part of the work that's already done by the team. We did stop producing leaflets some time ago because of the cost and approach. So that's not something that we've done in the recent past in terms of production of paper posters or leaflets, but we do, through that core team, use social media as a channel for promoting events across all our sites.
Councillor Carter, then Councillor Carwell.
Yes, Chair. It just seems to me, reading this report, that you've taken a decision and then you've tried to make what's in the report fit the decision you've already taken. And that's pretty plain to everybody who's seen it, and pretty plain to everybody who's watched the coverage in the media. And it's not, frankly, acceptable, because we're talking about a building here that has 50,000 a year participants in the building, that actually washes its face as a building. You're not saying it loses money. In fact, it just makes money. Now, if you were to extrapolate that across the council, you'd be shutting everything we've got, because you've moved from looking at things that are costing an arm and a leg to things that actually aren't costing anything at all. I accept that in time, capital investment will be required. I also know and have seen the report that goes back to 2015 that indicates £215,000 to do certain repairs and improvements that need doing. How many other buildings owned by Leeds City Council will need millions of pounds spent between now, you say 2029, you know that's not right. You know those buildings will have any shortfalls addressed over a longer period than that. And it draws me to the inevitable conclusion that you made your mind up. You then produced a report when more people kicked off than you thought. You didn't consult the ward members. You told, well, at least you told 2 ward members. And now you come with virtually a fait accompli. And my constituents, to coin a phrase, if Leeds City Council wanted to change its motto, perhaps it should change it to often mistaken, but never wrong. Because it seems to me that all you're trying to do is make the narrative fit the decision, and that is not right. And it is not the way you address other matters in Leeds City Council. The public outcry that there's been, 50,000 people making a small profit, making a small surplus, I should say, the car park issue, which has been addressed already, but you have known the car park issue was going to arise for a number of years. I would suggest your department has done nothing about it. And the result is you're now faced with a car park which was generating some money and which needs looking at completely separately to the future of Pudsey Civic Hall, completely separately. And then you don't even get right the fact there's no decked car park at New Pudsey Station. Do you wonder that we are sceptical, to say the least? I mean, this is a self-inflicted wound that didn't need to happen, because I hope I don't have to, but I will if I do have to. I'll produce the correspondence I have with your officers over the last few years about what people using the Civic Hall said and about the lack of welcome
and the difficulty they have in finding out when things are actually taking place. And all of that indicates to me there is no proper marketing strategy, and there needs to be. And if there was, I think there are groups, and even within Pudsey, who would use that building a lot more, indeed for the first time. And I'm sure you're aware of one of them because you've spoken to them, and I've spoken to them, and Councillor Carlill's spoken to them. So we know that organisations exist who could bring a lot of income, and that would put the capital investment needed in a much different perspective. And I query the figures you've come up with, because what you're suggesting, and how wonderful would it be, is the state-of-the-art refurbishment by 2029. And if you applied that to every other building in this city, you'd be in a heck of a mess. You know it's not going to happen. Now, what we want you to do is to go away and start again. Lift the threat, look at what's been suggested, and you do have an investor save budget within your department, as you're well aware. I know you have, because I put it there. So, all we want is a fair deal, and you to go away and properly look at the facts and figures and realise this building is well loved by the people of not just our ward, but all over the city, on one of the few remaining excellent bus services, on the A647, railway station, New Pudsey, big car park, any mode of transport you want, you can get there. Why wasn't it used more in 2023, Councillor Pryor? Why aren't we encouraging all these groups to use it? Why is it made so difficult for this area committee to meet there with every excuse under the sun, so people could actually come to the meetings and listen to our debates? A lot of questions to answer, and we want answers.
What I'd say is you are wrong in saying a decision's already been made. It hasn't. I think you proved the point that this is not something the council's wanting to do. You're trying to frame this that the council is, I don't know, eager to sell it despite it making a small surplus. But we know full well a lot of these decisions are being forced on us. We are having to make a lot of these unpalatable decisions around selling assets because of the situation we're in. You say you put that budget around investor save when you put it there when you were leader of the council, but that was a significant time ago, and the council has lost a significant amount of money since then, both in revenue and capital. As I said earlier, if there was a budget to do a full investor save here, we would take it. I'm happy to take ideas if you have got ideas of where to fund that, but that is not, it's not the reality we're facing. The 215 you quote, that was back in 2015, so due to inflation, that is significantly more, I think around 320,000 now, but that's an absolute minimum it would need just to meet some of the criteria. It wouldn't touch the sides on addressing all of the issues that the building has if that building is to have a longer term future.
Thank you, Councillor Carlyle.
Thank you. Yeah, you've clarified some of it there, because I think what I'm trying to understand in this is the different levels of what the building needs. I've been in there several times for events. It's clear that some work is needed to the building in many ways. So we've got three levels really. Yeah, we've all had conversations with groups who would look at taking it on, but it appears there's that difficulty in, let's get the clarification over whether that needs to be an EPC or E. But from there, can I take the minimum works to keep it operating if we were to operate it as a council? Is that 328,000 figure? And they're the minimum that we would want to do in order to keep it open and to keep it running as it is currently. Is that, I think that's, I just want to completely understand if the building were to continue running as it is, what is the investment that would be needed just for that to happen? The point about if it went externally, it would be in EPC. So what level of investment would that take? Obviously, we've had the figure of the 7.25 million, but that is the estimate that comes out for the square footage. I think I'd like to see more detail around what that would look like before any serious decision is taken. That is just an estimate of the scope of the building rather than the individual works. There's some other bits noted, you know, replacements of the windows and such. But really, the question on that, so there's not as much detail on that as I'd certainly like to see. You know, what exactly will be done? How have we got those costed up, and where does that get us to? And coming off the back of that is what scope have we looked into for external funding for those things? I mean, there's schemes such as public sector decarbonisation scheme. Does this fit within that? We've done a lot of work to schools, totaling hundreds of thousands for a school in order to do work there, and that is about increasing the energy efficiency of buildings. But there are other external avenues. It may be that some of these interested groups could find that funding better than we can as a council from external avenues, because there's funding that's available to them. But there's nothing noted, I guess, in the report of any investigation outside of the council's budget in terms of that work. And that detail about the work it needs, I'd certainly like a lot more information around that. You know, what is needed just to keep it going as it is, because it does, as we used to say, make a small surplus. I gather, you know, it doesn't make as much money as we would like from the car park, but to fully understand it, we need to see how those costs apply to that surplus that's made.
Yeah.
And how we could go about paying for those.
Of course, so the condition report is obviously not up to date. So I can't definitively say to you, yes, it's the inflation version of that 250k that'd be needed to get it up to that next level operational coverage. You'd need to commission another review to understand that and be able to definitively say that. So it's indicative that it would be 328k plus costs of prelims, contingencies, and fees around that in terms of the figure. There is some money that was already included in the in the capital investment programme around the heating system of 26k. So we know there's a figure around that. There's been a quote already got for the carpets that need updating. So if you've been in recently, you'll know that the carpets need replacing. So we would, to have a really definitive position, you'd have to make sure you asked for someone to carry out that work to give you a view, but it's an indicative position. We know that since we wrote the report, I have had some more information also about the ongoing maintenance costs. So you'll note in the report, it kind of says indicatively that's around £20,000. So I've been able to get from colleagues a clearer figure on some of that as well. So it's actually we've had to spend more than that in the financial year to date because of some of the drainage issues. So it's been 31.7k so far this financial year. So one of the things, obviously, is if you did invest, you probably reduce some of those maintenance costs because you move those positions through. So that's kind of on that specific piece. Obviously, if you wanted to get a fully costed view on a full refurbishment, again, you'd need to develop a scheme and bring that forward. Which all of this is possible. I suppose the issue then becomes officer time in key services in the council in terms of being able to do all of that work when those teams have also got a large programme of work they've got to do in terms of managing the capital receipts programme and the other aspects of their portfolio, but they're not here to sort of talk to that today. So I won't go further on that because I think that'd be something I'd have to understand in terms of capacity of those teams to do that work.
Yes, Andrew?
I suppose what we want to see here is some straightforward dealing, and that we've raised a whole series of questions to which we want answers. Now, to throw in these new carpets, well, I need new carpets, but I'm not going to pull my house down because I haven't got them. Come on.
Well, heating as well is on there as well.
I realise.
I think that was an indicative example.
Yes, I realise that it is. But what I hope we're showing you is that this whole argument is full of holes, as well as the carpets. So, what we would want you to do is to take it away, lift the axe, take it away and have some meaningful discussions, because I think you can talk to people who don't want to take the whole building over, but who could generate events that would give one heck of a lot of income into that building. And I don't think it's been tried or properly investigated. And that's certainly what our constituents think. many of whom attend events there, as we do. And what we want you to do is to take it away. Let's have a straightforward, factual report with some ideas of how things could be taken forward. We all know the council's in a difficult financial position, and you and I could argue day long about that, and it would do my constituents no good at all to hear us arguing. So forget it.
Sure, they'd enjoy it.
So forget it. Well, you might enjoy it. I might even enjoy it even more, but they wouldn't. They want to see something done to save this building. We need you to come back to us with suggestions, and you can't pretend to me, Jonathan, that this report isn't anything other than full of holes, which is why I made the point. You took a decision, then you made the report fit the decision. It stands out a mile. Go away, let's have a proper piece of work on it.
Look, I think hypo regarding a train station withstanding, that I don't think that diminishes the core facts.
Well, and the existence of a non-existing deck car park. I'm sorry.
Again, but that doesn't take away from the amount of work and the amount of money that is needed on this building. But I would say conversations are ongoing. As I said before, I've met with groups. I'm more than willing to meet with any other group. I'm more than willing to meet any councillor individually to discuss potential options.
And the officers should meet with the ward members. And that has only happened, sorry, Eve, but it's only happened after the event.
So I'm very happy to spend more time with you as ward members, walking through the proposals and understanding any concerns you have and further questions. I've met with ward members, both with Councillor Carlow and with yourselves, before this paper was noted, and responded to the questions that you asked in terms of how I brought this report forwards. So the chair asked me specifically to address certain questions, which is why the report was written in the way it was written. And so I hope it addresses the questions that were asked, because as an officer, that was what I was aiming to do in the report. From my point of view as an officer, I'm concerned with making sure we look at all the options before we proceed with a decision, and no decision has been taken. So today, from my perspective, it's helpful to understand your position as kind of councillors from the community here, in order to inform us further looking at the feedback we've had through the public consultation and the routes to reach the best conclusion.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Carlow.
I think what I'd like you to do, if possible, please, is investigate possibly splitting the car park and finding another useful part of it. I don't know, are there raised bed allotments? Is there an allotment society that people could grow their own food or something like that that could be used on that space, which would bring an income in and lessen the expenditure? You're saying the car park is the largest cost here in these figures. So it's the car park that needs to we need to find another use to bring some income. We need a very good strategic marketing strategy which would bring in more income. And then I think in terms of repairs that are needed, we do have a small surplus which has probably been eroded if you're saying that you spent a bit more on maintenance than is in these figures. But if you had more people using the building, then you would have more income, and therefore you would gain more surplus, and therefore you could do the immediate repairs and do them in bite-sized chunks rather than a huge amount. I appreciate that things are expensive, there are costs, but there are ways around this, and we can actually save this building for the people of the west of the city. It's one of, if not the only, large space that we have in the entire west of the city, and frankly we can't lose it. It's one of the only sprung dance floors that are left. It's for the people that use it for ballroom dancing, etc. It's absolutely vital. And these are people that could possibly only get out once a week or once a month or however, many times they can make it. And top, bottom, and middle, we can't lose the building. We have to find a way around it. And if we need to take discussions offline and get together and think about it, then I'm happy to do that. more than happy to do that, but we cannot use this building. Thank you.
Councillor Siri.
Yeah. Have you got the occupancy rate of each room then? You know, how many bookings it had? Do you know how good a turnaround that is and what's the potential?
So I don't have that level of detail to hand, but, you know, should you really want to go through all of that, we'd be happy to do that. I think that's reliant on Matthew and the team kind of providing that next level of detail down on the different use of the rooms. We've been through it with the team to get the numbers for the report. But if you wanted to have a more of a detailed breakdown, I have to go back to the team just to put that together.
It would be good to have, then we can see where, you know, there's pretty big opportunities where it still can be wrapped out and get more income in.
We've got the breakdown by type of event, but it is
by day and, you know.
Councillor Carter.
Yeah, that's the point, you see. There are various rooms in the building, and groups can be directed towards using them because it is so connected to the community, and it actually doesn't matter whether you're in the down in the middle of Armley or in Thornbury. There's a bus service, there are train services, there's a car park. People can get there to attend events. And to say to people, to an organisation, I'm going to put you in Leeds Town Hall, that'll be interesting. But to say to people, you can use Carving Mechanics Institute when it's an event that regularly has over 100 cars in the car park. I mean, you wonder why people get upset. I mean, that's just a ludicrous suggestion. And that's why we want this looking at properly. And points have been made by everybody present about what needs to be done and what can be done if there's a will. And if we want to see the building financially do a great deal better, and I absolutely believe it can, and the information given to me from user groups just underlines that, and potential user groups. That's what the commitment we want from you. We're going to look at all those things and make a proper job of coming to the right and proper decision, which is to keep it open. Trish mentioned the sprung ballroom floor. I mean, suggested to those groups that they go to places where there's smaller dance halls with no sprung floor. I mean, the whole thing just starts to come unpicked the more you go into it. So let's get it sorted out and talk about it and save that building.
I think there's no disagreement from us about how much people use it, how much people enjoy it, but it is the bottom line of where the council finances are at the moment. We are having to make unpalatable decisions. We're having to make decisions we would never, ever want to make. But that's where we are, which is why if there is another way through, I would bite anyone's hand off who presented one. So I can happily kind of give a guarantee that we'll continue to look at options. But with the caveat of what a horrific situation council finances are in at the moment.
Councillor Stewards.
Yeah, just before I ask my question, a few people have talked down Farnley Hall today. I want to put on record that Farnley Hall is an excellent venue. I'm willing to have meetings here for as long as possible.
Absolutely.
Yes. It's all agreed, but it needs to move around the outer west so that all the residents can attest.
No, I'm with you. The conversation feels like it's coming or drawing to a close, and I think it's great. You are more than willing to meet with any member around this table, including any organisation outside of here too, to discuss potential solutions to this. I suppose really what I'd want to know, and you might not have the figures to hand now, how much money is available for advertising? And presumably, if we were to dedicate money to this project, keeping this open, that would remove money from somewhere else. Where else would it come from?
I mean, so at the moment, we are taking money out of any budget that money can be taken out of. The amount we're having to reduce overall council funding by this year from inflation, from increasing demand for adult social care, is in the tens of millions. So there's not a pot of money hanging around that we could then kind of say, oh yes, we can use that for that. Any pot of money around at the moment is going to fill those gaps. So were we to take a decision to significantly increase marketing for here, it would mean cuts elsewhere.
Okay. And you can't point at the moment to where that money would come from?
At the moment, we are still trying to balance. So we are still trying to find things to cut to make the budget. So I couldn't sat here say what we would cut to improve or increase a a marketing budget for this?
No, of course. I mean, given that it's not my ward, and given that I've never really used it before, except for that one time we had the Out West meeting there, I can't speak to how popular it is, but it's clear it's very popular from the ward members and people who know it best. So yeah, thank you very much for agreeing to meet with anybody who might have a potential solution, and hopefully one can be found.
Councillor Carlin.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, just reiterating really that, I mean, I live right behind the building pretty much, and it's a big building, and that comes with its difficulties because, you know, I've tried to hire it for community events. The cost of hiring the rooms in there, it is quite large. Some of that is because of the size of the event, some of that is because of the amount of security it requires. You know, we've had times we've tried to hire it for Eid prayers for just one morning, and it's been in several hundreds of pounds for one room for one morning for that. Now I understand that it is an expensive building, and that therefore is the difficulty and the risk. The car park obviously previously made income, and that kept the whole thing afloat, and that's gone. But what I really want to understand is that aspect of the risk of it and of these works being there, because I understand that if no work is done, then something may happen there, and then, you know, you may have an event there that can't take place and you want to cancel things. I really want to understand what is that amount of money that would need to be put in every year so that the building could continue on as it is. And I think that's just a real difficulty we've had in finding that number. And from that, I completely accept the position around the difficulties in council budgets. But I think looking at external funding, looking at different groups that have been there, I'd like to make sure all of those have been looked at before a decision is made that we just can't afford it from our budgets or from moving it elsewhere. Because there are those other opportunities there. And certainly we found them in other areas. I would like to make sure they're exhausted. Thank you.
And Chair, we operate in a marketplace, don't we? And if it's very expensive, then all we do is cut off our nose to spite our face. And instead of making X, we make minus X. Well, what's the point? It needs somebody to look at it who sets out with the view, how do we make this building stack up? How do we increase the usage? How do we look at the charges to maximise the income, not drive people away? And then we'll get somewhere.
Yeah, and with anything like that, there's a full bell curve of kind of, as you decrease costs, you'll increase usage. But if you do it too much, you decrease the income. It's something we'll certainly look at, but it's not as simple as if we slash the prices in half, suddenly it will make twice as much money. It's certainly something we'll look at.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Siri.
I'm right in understanding that you said that the car park isn't charged on the weekend when it's the busiest point, because to me that's a no-brainer answer. You charge people through the week, then why are you charging people on the busiest time and maximising your revenue?
So I can't comment on why that decision was made around how car parking charges were set and who made that decision, but I'll certainly go back and check the logic about that. I'm presuming, but it's a presumption and I will need to check, that decision was made because those larger events happen at the weekend, and so it's kind of knowing that that's part of the arrangement for the venue, that it's attractive to the hirer, that the people can come to that event and park without paying. But that's a presumption, and I will need to go back and double check, because you'll need to understand how those decisions were made by parking on charges. But I'll happily check why that kind of model was put in place, and if there's any kind of history of records about why. Yeah.
Just on that point that Councillor Series just made, I spoke to one of the organisations that uses the Civic Hall for dance events, and they are so worried and so upset about losing the Civic Hall. They said, why don't they charge us parking spaces? It's rammed when we do our events with parents and grandparents of children, and we're more than happy to pay. Do you want to speak again, Councillor Coleman? I do think there's a way through here. I think there's such a will from the local people and from the local councillors. We know that our local people are wanting to use it for their other events. And this marketing strategy that you've got, it just doesn't wash. I understand about marketing completely. I'm from a marketing background. And to say that a cost of a bit of paper is going to stop you marketing it is not going to wash with my constituents. Social media is free. And I know it's going to take us some officer time, but that means that you could get that building up and running and going. You could get people in it again. You could start making more money. It's already making a small surplus. It will start to make more. If you are willing to work with us, we will help you make sure that this building pays for itself and stays open. Have to work with us, please. Any more comments? Councillor Siri.
Can you tell me why since 2015 nothing has been done to the building? Bearing in mind you've been aware that there's going to come a point where you need to do this work. We're talking nearly 10 years now, and why has nothing been done to preempt this?
Some works have been undertaken that are included in that condition report, not all. Again, it's an indicative piece. The key things that were identified in the report, like the windows in the heating system, have not been done. The major pieces of work. Again, that will be to do with prioritisation and the investment across the whole council portfolio in terms of the budgets in place to invest in all of our properties across the whole asset base. And of course, one of the challenges the council has at present time is the size of that asset base versus the budget we have to invest in each asset in terms of both maintenance and necessary ongoing investment into properties to keep them up to the standard that's required. And that's part of the challenge, ongoing challenge around kind of prioritising those budgets to get across the whole of the asset base and the whole asset portfolio.
Any more questions? Well, you've been given quite a lot of things to answer, so we'll be very grateful if you come back to us quickly as possible.
Yes, of course, absolutely. Very happy to follow up on any particular conversations that people would like to, any particular questions. We'll provide obviously something linked to committee, but if there's anything else that people want to approach myself about and my team, we're very happy to meet with anybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're now on to the finance report. So I'll hand over to Natalie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay, so this report starts on paragraph 19 on page 27. We've got the remaining balance of the wellbeing budget, that is £25,229.89. Okay. Since the last committee, there has been no declined projects. There has been 2 projects withdrawn, which was adult choir and youth choir, which was both by the music box. I'll do the ring fences first, because that's on the report first. So these are ring fences, sorry, for 24-25 budget. The plugs and Christmas lights was £9,549. And I can think remain the same as here. For the Christmas lights, oh sorry, we're reducing it by 5%, is what we said. So that's for all of the lights. So that's Broadlit, Parslit, Carslit, on reduced by 5%. We've got the CCTV Leeds watch, that's going to be reduced to 10,000 with the view to speak for money and get some clarification around the cameras from him. Small grants we've got that is £5,000 to remain the same as it was last year. Bands in the park, which will be for next year, will be 3,300. So ring fence. We've got the Outer West ASB and Road Safety or Community Safety Partnership. Previously £6,178, 5,000 as a ring fence. Community engagement, reduce that to 500. And then the last one on there is the Pharmacy Festival. We're looking to reduce that to 4,000 as a ring fence. And then I'll go on to the applications. We've got the Forms and Heights Fund Day, £4,000.
We've got the Pubsa Carnival, £2,600. We've got the additional area resource at Tyson Park and Newfoundland. This is obviously one that's changed to a 1 day a week, potentially at both parks, which would be £6,800 rather than £16,795. That's obviously something like the Cherry Park, so that's right amount. We've got the Pubsa littering. Decided that wasn't going to go ahead. Yeah. Pudsey in Bloom. Issues for £5,465.53. We're looking to do it for 5,000. We're looking at increasing the members at Pudsey in Bloom. Newfoundland in Bloom, which is £1,000. Agreed for that full amount. Carley in Bloom. That is looking to be reduced, and reducing the hanging baskets. And that's looking to be 4,360. And then finally, Farsley in Bloom, remaining the same at £3,235.31. We've got then the starts at paragraph 37 on page 32. Remaining balance there of £9,077.26. I do the ring fences first. For next year, the youth summit, £1,000 agreed. And the activity days is for Easter and summer. However, we're looking at just doing the Easter, which is the same amount as this year, £2,517. Yeah. We've got rock up to do a mock up. These are the applications now. Building futures together. This one looking at potentially using wellbeing instead because of low funding in the year. And only bringing 6,000 with potentially them getting another half. The Outer West Easter holiday taster sessions, ring fence from Massachusetts, already outside, that's 2,517, that's for all the wards. Family project, 1,950, great. Family football project, youth services, 1,125. We've got the Andes Youth Project at Robin Lane, which is again the youth services, 1,560. Wortley Youth Project at Lower Wortley Community Centre. This is a new project from youth services, and this is £1,180. Summer holiday targeted provision. This is a new project from youth services, £2,239.43. We've got breeze in the park, 11,400, with potentially changing Family Hall Park to Western Flats if appropriate, and keeping Hainsworth Park and Queen's Park. We've then got the Leeds Rhinos multi-sports camps, £6,000. We've got Dazzle Dance in Farnley. I've spoken to Ian. It's confirmed that there's 12 members in one group and 20 in another.
But with Councillor Blackburn, because obviously we didn't have this information earlier, David really wants it to stay. He says it helps some of the most deprived children in the ward, and therefore it has to stay where it is. They did get kicked out of Farnley Community Centre, but they're now back into Farnley Community Centre. So whatever happened there has been resolved. So Councillor Blackburn wanted to make it really clear, and I promised that I would convey his wishes. They want that to stay. And I'm inclined to agree with him as well.
Yeah. And that's for 3,997. Go to Youth Cafe. This is a reduced amount now, so it's £4,030. Agreed. And then we've got the outdoor equipment store. Now this one potentially we're looking at using capital instead. They've turned around, we're not able to use capital for this. So that's £3,000. So that's not being added to the figures because we're not sure if you still want to go ahead.
Right. Why can't we use it for capital?
About longevity, so capital, the clarification from capital was if it's an item or equipment that can be used long term, structural infrastructure, whatever, is fine, but this would be short term use, so it's wear and tear, so it's not going to be able to be used for say 5 years or whatever. If you're talking about this,
So it's still a lifespan beyond what that one.
yeah.
Councillor Carlin.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it had a couple of notes, didn't it, from groups that have used it that came alongside the application. It looks like a really valuable store of outdoor gear used for school groups, but my concern is if we don't fund it, those school groups are just going to stop taking the kids out for these experiences in school that they get. So obviously we had clarification earlier that there is a similar amount being put into some of the other areas that use it across Leeds. I suspect we use it more than others because it does sit at Free Stop in the Upper West. But I think given it's a one-off cost, as far as I understand, this is to replace the equipment. Maybe they might come back in a few years' time to replace some more. I think we should cover it. I appreciate that takes us nearly to the bottom of our wellbeing funding though, and we're going to have a little bit of a difficulty going forward.
Any comments from everybody else? Councillor Stewards.
Yeah, just to echo really what Peter has said, they're not going to come back year on year and ask for this. And it is equipment that children can't go on these trips without. They've been lasting for a long time with the equipment they have now, which is well out of date. And if we as a committee were to say no to this, that would set the precedent for the other community committees that now need to consider applications as well, because they're only applying for a proportional amount from us, proportional to the amount Leeds West needs. So I would be strongly in favour of passing it.
I think we've got no problems in passing it, but it's just where we actually take the money from.
It would have been helpful to use capital.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it's needed. That we've got to keep the children having the experiences, and we've got to give them the equipment so they can have those experiences. But where do we take that money from? It's a reasonably insignificant sum, but it's not insignificant given our current balances.
We could put it in there and just hope for the best. Something comes in cheaper than we thought, and we can do it.
Something suggest what could be suggested that to be more attractive to them because they well-being. I just said 50-50 use well-being.
Which is why we have to use the capital.
We thought they might have more flexibility around the budgets, but it's not happened the way we wanted it to happen, unfortunately. But I think wherever we can, we need to try to move funding across to somewhere else where we've got the funding. And it would have been useful if we could have put it into capital.
So, I mean, I understand that, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Yeah, we had 5,512 left, although Dazzle being approved, that takes that down to about 1,500. And then the wellbeing fund was 6,557, not including the extra 6,000 that might come back to us if we can get that other organisation to be more independent. So it could come from that, and it would leave us with 3,550 in wellbeing. I know it's really frustrating.
Has anybody got any WBI left? Could we use WBI money?
Well, that's capital.
No, is that still capital?
Yeah.
Okay. That it's got wellbeing then.
Yeah. The only other would be if you wanted to explore if anyone wanted to contribute from mice, and all board members could contribute some from mice, but that would be.
Well, me and Councillor Katz spoke about it in the break because they've not got a start date as such, so there's not like a project that's going to start in April. So potentially at this time we could defer it to a later committee meeting when people have got more mice money, we know where we are in regards to things like that. Just potentially because they'll get the money and use it when we give it to them rather than start it or May, June, it can be whenever. I know the school trips obviously will be starting now, which was you know, just an idea.
My preference would be to not do that so that we can fund them straight away, because I know they've got equipment to purchase based on my conversations with the applicant.
I think they need to know whether they've got the money or not rather than hanging on. I think we've got to do it. You know, it's something that's really vital. If the children are going on these experiences with their schools, then they need the right equipment, and parents can't necessarily always afford to do it because the children might never use that equipment again. So, you know,
Yeah.
I think we do it if everybody else agrees, obviously, and then we just hope that something else comes in a bit cheaper somewhere along the line, or.
I think more and more we're having to look at, it's not just value for money, is it? It's the value it gives to the people and children in this case that really need it. And, you know, we talk about the building for the futures and how good that is because it hits the right kids. It gets kids who get to the kids who need it. And I think this is one of those projects where you do get value for money. You get to hit the kids that need it. I mean, some things in the past when we've had more money, we've been able to fund things that are nice to do, that kids enjoy or people enjoy. But now we have to look very carefully and we have to be effective. And I think this is one of the projects that is effective.
Absolutely.
Cherry.
Councillor Siri.
Yeah, sorry, have you applied other community committees as well then?
Yes.
They're going to do, yeah.
Yeah. How
We're
much
the
are they
first, I
looking
think.
for overall?
Well, I think we're the first, what they're looking for overall.
They've not mentioned it because we're the first we've applied to. Normally I think they get money from the lottery and tried other places before, so this is the first time they've come to committee. I think because we're the first one, they're kind of seeing how the process works. So I know they will be going to other ones.
I mean, basically, Chair, we don't say yes, the scuppered. If we say yes, but one of the other two says no, sounds awful. We've done what we think is right. But we'd stop them being able to apply to anybody else if we say no, because we'd already be £1,000 down, £3,000 down.
Yeah. In a rock and a hard place with this one.
I think one of the key things is to, that's the point I was trying to make to Councillor Pryor about we operate in a marketplace. I'd have been paying out another £1,000, passing carving Christmas lights, had I gone to the council for the trees, which I normally do. They wanted £1,500, and I've got them for 3 trees for £500, including putting up and taking away. So I can tell you that our Christmas lights now were not the only ones to pull the plug on the council, because various people said to me, "What, there aren't trees now?" I told them, and they went to other suppliers. So we need to look at things like that. So we are able to come in and say, well, actually, we could do that. It's self-defeating sometimes. Even from being in marketing, I know perfectly well from being in business that the customers will stand so much, and you overegg the pudding, and you lose your customer. And that's what's happening to Leeds City Council. And then they're in a self-defeating spiral. So we have to find the money for this, don't we?
Yes.
Are we all agreed?
Yeah,
Yes.
So it'll come
Right.
from well-being then.
Yeah.
So we've just got one small grant that's come to this committee meeting, which is Fab, which is something that we've got a funding previously. Small grant for £465 for 15 months.
Where do they meet? Is it this one?
There's various things. Take routes out to places, come to their homes and such. Yeah.
That's okay.
I remember going through the details, seeing quite a lot of events that were getting for this funding. There's quite a lot that they're doing for just it's 400 and odd pounds. So I think it was for people who are unlikely to go out to other public events, just for people that may need more support or that weren't able to. So I thought it was a very valuable thing for us to have.
These people already have difficult lives. It's fair to say.
And the one-to-one, that's why it's called FAB, physically handicapped able-bodied. So the disabled people have a appropriate adult with them.
I'm happy to pass it.
I am.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, capital when there's no capital applications. There is for still applications, 3 will be in the report, 1 is a rare item. So I'll start with the clubhouse. This is for Wortley Football Club. They're asking for £10,000. They've got match funding of 80,000 to build a clubhouse. This is in family Wortley.
Brilliant. I'm very, very excited about this project. So Wortley FC provide so many opportunities for young people right across Farnley and Wortley to get involved in football, and they are basically our football club. I'm not saying that we should give them money because Calvin Phillips went there, but it certainly doesn't hurt. The clubhouse itself is something that they are desperately needing. So the site where the clubhouse will be based is a site that they have improved dramatically themselves. They haven't come to us, the Out West Community Committee, for funding for years now. They managed to level out all the playing fields, put multiple playing fields on that site, and also build their own dressing rooms. But they have come to us now in order to get started on this project. They've got this match funding, 80,000 already, with potentially more on the way, but they haven't put that in the application because it isn't guaranteed. So we didn't want to misrepresent how much they might have in future. But in order to employ the architects and get going, this initial 10,000 will help them start. It's an application I strongly support.
Yep.
I'd second that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then we've got the Western Flats play area. This is the additional wheelchair accessible equipment and picnic tables on parks. Looking for £10,000 again.
Yeah. So on Western Flats, then we've got this new play area. It's been paid for by Section 106 money. It's getting installed now. It's been a long time coming. One of the problems with it is that there isn't enough wheelchair accessible equipment. And working with Leeds City Council Parks Department, it becomes clear that one of the reasons they don't select this equipment is because of its high maintenance costs, because it often breaks down. And so by default, as policy, they don't purchase these items. Now, it just so happens that we have some wheelchair users who are very excited about the park, but were disappointed they wouldn't have wheelchair accessible equipment in. So what we suggested to do, the councillors, is we suggested that they put this application in again to SIL, so it doesn't affect any other budget, so that we could purchase the equipment and then, as councillors voting this through in this committee, take the associated risks with the maintenance. It's not something I want them to lose out on, and it is something that I am, as a councillor, prepared to take a risk on. Obviously, the public could then turn around and go, why on earth have you spent £10,000 of community infrastructure levy funds on some equipment that you knew might break over time? And the answer is, we need this park to be accessible to everyone. And we are prepared to come back if necessary and pay for it again ourselves to ensure that it keeps operating. I really don't want a single child to lose out on the new play area because they're in a wheelchair. That's why that's come here.
I had similar thoughts when we did Pudsey Park, and the Parks Department, their approved supplier don't have any accessible equipment that's really worthwhile, and ours have all broken, and they've offered to replace it for the lesser able-bodied swings, for example, but they haven't refunded us, so I'm still arguing that point.
I think sometimes
They do break.
Yeah.
They get a lot of hammer, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I think sometimes disabled people, they're not very vocal, and I think quite often they're the last people to be thought of. So I think it's really important. I'd like to see disabled facilities all over the city. Sorry, Councillor.
No, it was just again, I really don't want to see a new, fabulous new playground in our area, but not denying people access to it, or living with a disability. It's not right.
It's a question of
we have to do it really, don't we?
Yes,
Knowing what the risk is,
exactly.
and we've had two pieces of equipment that are suitable for disabled people in two parks. Both we finished up having to find money to get them repaired.
Yes,
But would we do it again? Yes, of course we would. Yes, of course we would.
absolutely.
Can I suggest, Chair, that we write to Parks and ask them to find a supplier for accessible equipment that, you know, that's equal to the task?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's no point standing with the same supplier who can't offer us what we need for our residents.
Yeah.
We're here to advocate for our residents. We're giving Parks money in good faith, and we aren't getting, quite frankly, the bang for the buck that we need.
We seem to be hidebound, Chair, don't we, to the supplier. And if the supplier, in my world, if the supplier doesn't have what you want, you find another supplier.
Exactly.
And that seems to be a problem, and it shouldn't be.
Apparently, it's extremely difficult to get onto Leeds City Council's suppliers list. Well, maybe it shouldn't be quite as difficult, and then we can have a better variety and maybe some better prices.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Again, it's the economy of scale, isn't it? If you're going to one provider, they know they're the only provider, then they're going to charge you what they like.
Yeah. A bit more savvy about it. So, right,
Yes.
moving on. So, can we write to Parks and ask them to look at different suppliers?
Right, thank you very much. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, the next one then is outdoor cricket nets. It's at Fudge St Lawrence Club. £10,000 they're asking for, with match funding of £15,000 to replace the existing static outdoor cricket practice nets on Thomas Road ground.
They haven't approached me, so I can't make any comment.
I'm aware, I've read the report and I got in contact with the club. Obviously looking to replace the existing outdoor practice nets. They do a lot of work in the community and they go into schools and engage with them. And they have some fantastic activities during summer, and then Friday club, engaging a lot of youth. So it's, really good. And obviously they've got funding from King Cricket as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
So they got 10 grand from the system installation, MTP, whatever that says, ECB, 5k match funding, and 10k from us. But it's coming from your SIL, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, we've got the money.
Yeah.
I think it's a great project. They work really hard in our community. I support it.
Right, okay, next one.
And then the next one is, again, it's family work, it's farm lane, principal growth fencing. This is match funding with HAP to install a wooden version house fencing. I know we've spoken about this already. So they're after £3,575, which is
Yeah, so on this one, I am denied about this. So more than a year ago, it relates to a street that's about 10 minutes that way. There's a wall and then a very steep drop onto Bourne Lane. And it's very easy to fall over that wall if, say, you're a young child. And the wall runs alongside lots of properties, so lots of gardens, very easy to access. See people jumping down sometime, even though it is quite a steep drop. So I contacted housing and said, is there anything we can do to put a fence up here? So this was more than a year ago. As time's gone on, eventually we get this quote back from HAP. And the quote, the amount they initially quoted was lower than this. And so I said, okay, maybe we can make an application to SIL funds. And then they came back and said, no, they've made an error. It's actually slightly higher and it's at this cost, which made me pause for thought. So, are we really going to spend this much on a fence? But the truth is, having spoken to the residents who live there, who do have children, it would bring them peace of mind to have a fence installed there. Do I wish it cost less? Yes, I do, but HAP are match funding it, and we know there's going to be some difficulties with HAP in the future. So I think that we seize on this opportunity now. We do contribute £3,575 of SIL money towards it, so that there is a fence there to make it safe. And it is about safety, and it is about the safety of the children that play in that area. So you can't really put a cost on that. So I am in favour of the application.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that would be the end of the finance report then.
Okay, any questions? Okay, next item, which is the, I'm not wrong, the update. Yes, the update.
Thank you, Chair. So, because it's, as you know, there's not a lot in the update report, so I just wanted to quickly mention something that we're sharing, which is a pilot scheme that's taken place for West Yorkshire Police, inclusive arts, the walk and talk. I've been sharing it on Facebook as well. It's about listening to women's experiences for them to feel free to share thoughts and raise concerns where they feel safe, where they don't. It's an app, it's lots of information on the police website as well, but I just wanted to bring it to the committee.
Yeah, thanks. Different part of the report, there's an update from Parks and Countryside. It mentions drainage issues in a couple of parks, Queen's Park, Pudsey and Western Flats Park. What it doesn't mention is drainage issues in other parks. I think obviously the amount of water we've had coming down recently has been a lot more than we're used to, but has exacerbated existing problems. I mean, we all know the problems in Westwood Park in Barnsley where there's one large area that is practically a pond that, to be honest, we should just make into a pond because it probably did better as a water feature than others. But I also went to look at Chatsworth Park the other day because obviously councillors had paid for the new multi-games equipment that went in there, multi-games area, the mugger. I don't like using that word mugger. Yes. Tell people there's a mugger in the park, they'll get scared more than others. Yeah. But it took me wading through 3 inches of practically mud, I would say, to get there, because there isn't a path over to the.
Well, there are kids playing on there all the time. It's being well used. The state they must be in when they get home must be horrific.
I bet the mums and dads are very pleased with them when they come home.
So I think it notes obviously that the Park Service have had discussions with flood management about those 2 parks that's mentioned in the report, but if they could also continue around, especially Chatsworth recreation ground in Carving and Farsley, Westbury Park, they should be well aware of because the problems have happened there for a long time. But I would like it reflected in there that some of the parks are unable to be used at the minute. And I know it is from the additional water that we're getting that we wouldn't have done before, but we need to factor it in quickly because otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a pond, isn't it, in parts of Chatsworth?
Yeah. The problem with Westbury is that it's always been like this, and a lot of money was spent on trying to drain what was the old football pitch. Which isn't a football pitch now, it's just a grassed area. Parks Department then planted all those twigs and called it the Farsley Forest, which was promptly mowed down. And no trees will grow on that area because it is too wet. And unless they do something to drain it, then it's completely useless trying to expect trees to take proper root and grow on a bog like that.
Have a mangrove forest, couldn't we?
We could go wading through it.
Yeah. We think those.
Yeah, perhaps it's another matter that it can be sorted. It isn't historically a recreation ground that floods like that, but it has this time. And considering the efforts we have to put in to get the money for the mugger and doing up the existing kids' playground, then we need something doing there.
We do, and Chatsworth Park is what it's the only park the kids have got in that area, and we get complaints kids are playing on the streets. Well, they will if they haven't got a decent park to play in. They can't play if it's covered in water. They can't play in it, so they're going to play on the streets, aren't they? Councillor Nicholsky.
Thank you, Chair. Western Flats, the series of storms we've had has, the locals call it a river, but it is actually affecting properties, people's personal properties now, as it runs down the footpath on Bossett Lane. So I'm pleased to see that flood risk management are there, because we do need some sort of intervention to stop that damage in property.
Yeah. Right. Okay. That's it.
That's it from me. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So we've got another item now, which I had.
Can I just ask something on the update on this report? So the report from Leeds Watch, they've given us camera numbers, but it would be useful to be able to identify those cameras where they are. There are 3 cameras who have had, according to this report, no activations, and it would be useful to know where they are. Are they useful?
Yeah,
Bearing in mind how much we're paying.
we're paying a lot of money for those cameras.
Chair, it feeds into exactly what we discussed this morning,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. You've got 3 with no activations, you've got 2 with 1 activation, you've got 3 with 2 activations. You know, we need them because, you know, we don't want, God forbid anything happen that we could have used them for and they're not available. However, we need to make sure that we are, you know, making good use of them.
Councillor Blackburn and I went round the Leeds Watch operation, and it all looked fantastic. They were looking at several cameras all the time. They were looking at most of the city centre, but some of the cameras that are in our areas are not monitored all the time, and they have to go back into it to get the footage out. You have to give them an exact time and why you want it and all the rest of it. And then it can be weeks later before it's found. Well, if that's for the police, it's a waste of time that it's gone then. So I want to know why we're not getting reports. We're not getting full reports like we used to do. Now, they say they don't have the facilities, but they did have the facilities before because we used to get the reports. And if they want the money, then they are going to have to produce the evidence that they're being used. I mean, downtown street in Farsley, I know that it is very useful there. It goes up and down, and they can see people, and they have prosecuted people and they've caught people on it. But the other ones, I'm not sure about, and I think we need to know.
Well, if you read this report that they've given us, we should only really have 2 cameras that are being used effectively.
Yeah, they want the money. They're going to have to prove the evidence that it's being used, because we're not just giving them money for the sake of it. Right, okay, so we're on to the next one now, which is the cluster. Yes. Would you like to come and sit at the table? Would you like to sit at the table?
Shall I come and sit at the table?
Yes.
Sit at the table nicely.
I'm loud, it's nice, obviously. Totally different view from here. So thank you for letting me come, Chair, of the councillors. I don't know, I don't particularly have an agenda really as much as I wanted to raise awareness, because when I've had conversations with Natalie, I think a lot of the work that takes place that clusters deliver isn't fully recognised because it's not part of the mainstream council service, council children's services. We're made up of a sort of a funding pot that comes from the NHS, from LCC Children's Services, but majoritively from schools. And I know we have got some council input into the joint collaborative committees that certainly the 2 clusters that come under this particular committee, which is Inner West and myself in Pudsey. But I just wanted to make sure that people knew what we were doing, really, to be honest, and to give you the opportunity to get involved, know who we are, how to contact us, and what the strengths and weaknesses of that are. I can talk the hind legs off a donkey for anybody who, I'm very professional as well, we'll try to turn that back. I do talk quite a lot about this, so I will try and keep it to within 10 minutes and then answer it.
Yes, please keep it to 10 minutes, thank you.
Absolutely, I've already been told. I've got it's a bit of a presentation which I'll just take a brief through. It comes with the strong caveat that this is a restructure has been approved in principle for early help within children's services, which is due to go live in April, which will change some of what goes on here. So it's a bit of a work in progress, but what I wanted to really touch on is, so clusters sit within the support networks within children's services within early help. So if you look at the left-hand side, that is the escalation within early help services, taking into account services such as what schools would deliver as a front line, moving into teams like myself, who deliver the additionality, and moving into some of the more intensive services. So things that we can offer families, range from somebody in a children's centre doing additional support work following notification of a domestic abuse incident, ranging right through to a worker from multi-systemic therapy working 20 weeks on a 24/7 process with a particular family where there is that level of needs that takes place. We have got access to all of these services. Within your two cluster areas, we did a data search in 2023. So there were 1,111 interventions offered for young people in this community area. 194 of those were in the home family support, working with parents to manage behaviour for where there's additional support needs. 93 were delivered through group work. There was 467 young people who benefited from one-to-one counselling support in a variety of guises, of which only 75 actually went into mainstream CAMS. The rest of them were delivered by either my team or the team in the West. We had 101 into more targeted specialist services that could range from anything such as Leeds Mind, where there's a young person who suffered trauma, the ISVA service within victim support where there's been sexual violence, to any other services that we're aware of. And also we supported these schools and other settings to deliver 181 other referrals and other pieces of intervention. So in terms of numbers, we're really busy. There's about 20,000 people, 20,000 children attending schools within these two areas. That's just from last year. That was just over 5% of those young people who required that level of support. We get referrals mainly from 3 services. So schools, if I talk more about Pudsey, that's because that's my area. I would imagine that this is going to be similar, guys, in different cluster areas, but it will shift ever so slightly. Schools account for roughly 50% of the referrals that we take. With the duty and advice service within children's services, so children's social care front door, in effect, we're having another 25%, and MindMate single point of access, which is the CAMS service, almost the CAMS service front door, if you like. So referrals from a GP would go to MindMate Spa, and then they would, if they felt it was appropriate, come into my team, mainly for counselling support for young people. But we are seeing a particular rise in young people with an ADHD or autism presentation. So we have sort of expanded our service offer around family support. So we now deliver the Signet Parenting Support Programme, which is specific for parents of autistic young people. As with everything, the demand is going up. So in Pudsey, we had 717 requests intervention last year. That was up from about 600 when I came into post in 2018. But the complexity is also quite significantly higher. So we would have had the 600, but of that, 100 of them were almost minimal effort interventions. So we could be a bit more light touch. The cases we're seeing coming through, regular, really severe anxiety, young people not leaving the house, lots of self-harm, lots of very aggressive, angry young people in the home, and we're supporting parents around all of this as well. So that's kind of our bread and butter. We do also advocate with more complex cases. Part of my role is to get involved where there are stuck cases, where we need to problem solve specific instances, and that will be involving sort of even more specialist services within children's services and within the NHS typically. We also offer some partnership work. So I do try my best to get to the people and places, what used to be called the tasking team meetings for the Pudsey area. I know, so I've seen some people's faces there. It is hit and miss because obviously if something comes up, I am based in a school and I do have to respond to issues as they come through. We've also had in the last 12 months a really successful partnership with West Yorkshire Police looking at particularly vulnerable young people in the bus station and park area of Pudsey, which I'm not taking all the credit at all because I think the police, and particularly Rachel Smith, the sergeant, has been absolutely fantastic. But alongside a punitive response, I've done this sort of work for a lot of years. You need to balance that with a supportive element as well, and engagement with families and an engagement with young people. And I think the statistics speak for themselves in terms of a really significant reduction in youth crime that's taking place in that locality. So really quite proud of that, actually, to be honest with you. But I won't, it's not for me, it is for the partnership actually as a whole. I'm not sure where we are in terms of time, but I will try and stop there now. Has anyone got any questions, anything they want to know?
I certainly have one. very interested in the work you do in teaching, in training teaching staff. Because when I worked for Children's Hospice, I got some autism training, and I was quite shocked. So I've got a disabled daughter with autistic characteristics, and I was quite shocked at the things that you shouldn't do and what you should do with autistic children. And what I hear a lot from parents is the way some teachers talk to the children, and it's because they don't understand how you talk to an autistic child. That's why they're not bad teachers, they just don't know how to deal with autistic children. So I was quite surprised that all teachers didn't have this training, but obviously, you know, it's just one of those things that you don't get trained on. So I wondered, is there any possibility that you could get into the teacher training days to get to train all of the teachers?
We have a rolling programme, so the autism work, the Signet is with parents of autistic children, that's the core delivery, but we do also run and fund the STARS, train the STARS of the Leeds City Council Autism Specialist within education. They deliver the 3 tiers of autism awareness work with all the schools in Pudsey every year. So we have the tiers 1 to 3, 1 being more of the teaching assistant role really as a one-to-one. Tier 2 being the classroom teacher, tier 3 being somebody on the senior leadership. So there is somebody on the senior leadership within each school that should be almost a single point of contact for anything in relation to autism and neurodevelopmental. Not usually the same code, but it's not always the case. So we do have a rolling programme. We are in every school. What I'm more than happy to do is to look at, if schools had the same training day at the same time, this would be a relatively easy operation to do. But we've got 18 schools in Pudsey.
Right.
And it would be quite a challenge to get somebody into every single one of them every single year. But what we can do is, the uptake has waned, I would say, on that particular programme in the last 2 years. It is to do with demand, it's to do with capacity in school. The schools are incredible in Pudsey, I have to say. But I'm more than happy to raise that at our next school cluster meeting and just say that actually almost a little bit of a more restorative name and shame. This is who hasn't put somebody forward for this training in the last 12 months. We need to just get more of this ticking through.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, just little things quite surprising that you shouldn't say that, you should tell them what you're doing first. You don't speak to them like you speak to a normal child. It's completely different, and it can just resolve a lot of the issues straight away.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I've benefited from STARS training. I'm a maths teacher,
Right.
and I can vouch for it as well. It's very, very good. The more people do it, the better it becomes. I'm really interested to hear your work at Pudsey Bus Station. I'd be really interested to hear more about that, purely because we're still having antisocial behaviour incidents of our own. And we always lean into the police, who have been incredibly helpful, helped us solve some of the problems, but solve's probably the wrong word because it keeps popping back up. It's like whack-a-mole, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd love to know what work you did in, with regards to that incident, so that I know what we can apply here.
Yeah. So we pulled a meeting together initially in about December 2022, where we looked at what the issue was within that locality. And the issue was secondary age young people gathering and committing various nefarious activities, as teenagers will do. Let's be honest. That is, I mean, if you're a maths teacher, I'm definitely preaching to the converted there. But there was also an undercurrent of involvement with some levels, and there still is some level of organised offending within that. There were vulnerable young people who were being put in the way of people who were using them for their own gain and removing the power from the young person. What we did was quite simply pulled a partnership meeting together, identified who these young people were using data sharing from the Crime Disorder Act and the Children Act to justify that, because obviously this is confidential information. And then put a plan in place for each young person as they were identified. It's something we meet every 6 weeks. That list grows, shrinks, people come onto it, people leave it. Some, I think in the last 12 months, there's been 2 which have escalated into higher levels than we've been able to operate. We are here very much to prevent an escalation. We're not here to challenge organised crime groups or whoever is involved in that. That is very definitely a uniform and a badge. But we've been it has simply been a case of understanding that young person, offering engagement by schools, via my team, via the police. I mean, PS Smith has done a lot of home visits. I've done a lot of home visits to families, and a lot of parents are unaware or not quite sure about what has been going on. So if you get there early enough, you can push a lot of open doors. But for me, what we've done is balance that. So we are offering a punitive response. Obviously, if somebody breaks the law, that is the police, and antisocial behaviour teams are also involved. But I want to be able to balance that with what work is going on in schools. So the St Giles Trust are in all 3 high schools in Pudsey, offering one-to-one support around emotional impact, anger management, the consequences of behaviours. That programme has been incredible for some of these young people. We've got work such as the turnaround project within the Youth Justice Service, which will allocate a one-to-one worker to work with somebody who's on the peripheries of serious offending. Again, for the right case, for the right person, absolutely incredible. We utilise things such as evidence-based parenting programme delivered by my staff, or referrals into more intensive services. I can think of maybe 3 or 4 families where we've referred into multi-systemic therapy, which is a specific programme within Leeds City Council Children's Services, which is as intensive a service as you'll find anywhere in the country. There is somebody on call literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to support a parent to be able to manage challenging behaviours. And part of those challenging behaviours is typically adolescent offending and aggression and violence in the home. So we've used, I couldn't say there's been one strategy other than getting the right people around a table, having a real conversation about understanding who these young people are, where their vulnerabilities are, and then identifying what would be the right approach to try. And if that doesn't work, we try the next. And just trying to keep it ticking over from there. I've not done a full evaluation on it. It's only been going just over a year. I think I'd quite like to, because I do think it's been quite a successful piece of work. It's based on a piece of work I did in other parts of the city, to be honest, which was probably, I would say, much more significant of a concern. But it's sort of suggests to me that one approach can work in different areas as well. So does that answer your question?
It does. That's very helpful to know. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
Brilliant. Cheers. I should have done that.
Sue, would you like to come forward? I'm sorry we've had to keep you waiting so long.
No, that's all right. This is a bit of a laugh entertainment at the end of the long meeting. Thank you very much for giving me your time. Can I just introduce myself? I'm Sue Baker. I'm one of the Deputy Lieutenants for West Yorkshire. And the reason I want to come and talk to you today is about the King's Award for Voluntary Service in particular. King's Award for Enterprise, and to find ways that we in the lieutenancy can work with you as councillors and mutually support each other. So normally at the beginning of you leave questions to the end, but there are 2 questions that I'm going to answer that I know you will be asking me. First one is, how much is this going to cost me? And the second one is, how much time does this involve? Because you're all really busy people. There's no cost whatsoever. And the time involved is the time it will take you to send me an email, and that's it. So we in the lieutenancy know that there are amazing voluntary organisations in the community who do fantastic work. And we don't know how to get hold of them. And we want to help them get some kind of formal recognition through this King's Award scheme. And we know that you as councillors, you know your own areas, you are out in the community, you get invited to events to see different groups and organisations. And so all that I'm asking, there are a number of deputy lieutenants across the whole of West Yorkshire, and I have been asked to take responsibility for the Leeds area. And so all I want is, if you come across in your travels an organisation, a voluntary organisation that you think is doing amazing work, all I need from you, please, is the name of the organisation and a contact, and that's it. We will look at whether there is quite a lot of eligibility criteria. We will look at all of that. I'm not going to go into it in detail because I know time is precious, but we can check whether an organisation is eligible. The two most important things to say is that the organisation needs to be volunteer-led, even if it has paid staff, and it can have paid staff, but as long as the volunteers have a considerable input into the organisation, they may well qualify, and we will do all of the research and all of the contact with the organisations. Similarly, with the King's Award for Enterprise, again, there are different criteria, but if you just let me know a business that you come across, they win awards for in different categories like international trade, innovation, sustainable development, promoting opportunity through social mobility. You don't need to worry about any of that. We will do the checking through the lieutenancy. What do the groups get out of it? Well, the groups, if they, I have to say, it's known as the MBE of awards, so it's not easy to get. Probably only about half of the organisations who are nominated actually get it, so it's not an easy one. But if they do get it, they are allowed to use this logo on all of their correspondence and for their own benefit, for the life of, this is for the voluntary organisations, they can use it for the life of their organisation, and that helps them get funding from other sources. It helps all sorts of ways. It gives them a prestige. There's a present, they get some glassware and a certificate signed by the King, which is made in a formal presentation to them by the Lord Lieutenant, so they get publicity out of it. And from that point of view, it helps them get promoted. And I've heard you talk today about groups that you've been involved with, and it just happens, I can tell you that Dazzle is one of the groups who's won it previously. I've got, there are Friends of Roundhay Park, there's there's lots and lots of different organisations all doing incredibly different things, but all contributing something to the community. And that's the way that I think both the lieutenancy and the council want the best for the communities that they represent. And we want that. We'd like to work with you. And so in return, what we could do is, if you know of your organisations, if they're having an event or something and they'd like representation from somebody from the lieutenancy to come and formally be present at their events, we're really happy to do that. Please just let me know. And essentially that's it. That's all I'm going to ask. I've got cards with my contact details. Perhaps I could leave one with whoever's taking the minutes to put on your website. And I did a card for each of the councillors. I think it's probably least involved request that you're going to get, no cost to you. We really want to recognise these organisations and help to promote them, and because they get very excited when they win. It's an immense honour for them, and we do all the work. So thank you very much for giving me your time.
Thank you.
Can I pass some
That's the most positive thing we've heard all day. That's the most positive thing we've heard all day.
We know from experience that there are these organisations out there. The current Lord Lieutenant, Ed Anderson, has been very keen to help promote them. What I can tell you is that we started to try and do this a bit more proactively about 4 years ago. Prior to that, the Leeds area they'd got two winners in 2019, one in 2015, one in 2012, one in 2005, and one in 2004. And since we started to do this, we had 4 winners in 2021, including Dazzle and Catch, which is an organisation in Hare Hills that lots of people have heard of. Freedom for Girls, which provides predominantly sanitation products for women who, there's Horsforth Community Cafe, there's Black Health Initiative. In 2022, there were 5 groups that won it. And last year, there have been 7 groups who won it. So we want to try and get as many groups recognised as we can.
Thank you very much. It's nice
Thank you
to.
very much for letting me come and talk.
Thank
I
you.
find on a positive and ways we could work together.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll have lots of names for you.
Well, please do. I mean, obviously, we won't bombard. You know, we'll try and do it in a managed way. But we don't know who the organisations are. We'd love to get hold of them, and you can help us to do that.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Last item is time and date of the next meeting, which is June, I believe. Yeah. What's your got there? 12th of June. It'll be summer by then. We'll all be smiling.
Could I just, sorry, I did forget to mention, sorry, that the scheme runs from June to September. It's open for applications, which is why I particularly wanted to come to this meeting. So just to let you know, from June till September. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a long day.
Certainly has. Right, we can close.
Thank you.
Yeah.
1 PM. Check at the time.
What's that? 1 PM for the
Next meeting.
No, that was worse.